God, we've got 10 minutes left in time. So we'll take questions, and if anybody on the panel feels, oh, that's one for me, just step forward and take it, yeah? So, question?
Not signing, but still doing well.
Okay, so YouTube obviously is a phenomenon that's only been with us since 2006, but it has now got to the point where you can put something up there and all it has to be is good, because the YouTube community will spread the word of mouth, and you will have the possibility of getting 2 million views in 2 weeks if it's good enough. And you obviously had a really good track that did really well just before Christmas. So the question is, will we get to a point where you could carry on that trajectory without going to the mainstream?
Sorry, we had Alex Day play in the shop in Evesham after his top 4 hit about 3 months ago. And he turned up, talk about DIY, he turned up with his cousin, who is his manager, and his best mate, who was driving because he'd had a week off work or whatever. And this was a guy who'd had a top 4 single. And the record company put out a physical single 3 months later, but as far as I know, I think he's disappeared off the radar now. So I still think that, you you need to be signed by somebody or other. You can't do it. You can get to a certain stage, but I think to go on to the next stage, you do need help.
Did you have something to say?
Well, yeah, I don't think that being signed itself necessarily will remain the Holy Grail, but what will is you will need some kind of platform and some kind of support and some kind of professionals working around you in the boring stuff like legal and publishing and things like that around you once you are established. So it might not be a record deal as such, but those things always come in the end. I mean, Amanda Palmer was it last week? She did like $500,000 through the crowdfunding thing or something. Was it that much? But she already did that because she'd had that establishment already and that support network around her. So I think, there will be more creative ways of doing it, but I think the YouTube model, by the random nature of it, won't be able to be the model that you would advise any artist to follow.
I mean, this might sound counterintuitive from a record label, and a major one at that, but fundamentally the answer to your question is it's not the Holy Grail, because the issue is record companies put out products, and what artists need is services, if you like. So what you're talking about is, I need a press officer to help me get this off the ground, or I need an A&R person to help me shape the record. You can now go and procure any and all of that from the open market. As long as you can find the funding, which is still the tricky bit, particularly in the political and economic environment in which we find ourselves, that's gotten even harder. But so fundamentally, it depends what unit of art you want to make. That should drive your, dare I say it, business strategy or strategy. It shouldn't, do you see what I mean? In a way, it's a record deal is the right thing for someone who thinks and wants to make records, but actually I'm constantly amazed that so many people turn up at our door wanting a deal when actually, allegedly, we're fucked. So it's kind of hard to understand. I mean, you can do things so many different ways, and I think that's the thing, it's a decision. It's where creativity meets commerce, and that's an uncomfortable interface.
Okay, there's a question up there. And further to that point, I'd steer you the way of perhaps show of hands, who've managed to, since 1991, managed to steer a career completely outside the standard record industry. They haven't played the big city centres, they haven't released records on even independent labels, they've merely pressed them up on their own label and sold them at gigs. They've been fully professional in all that time. They haven't done anything other than make music, and they've had this well-oiled machine with two musicians and a driver who'd go around the country playing 6 gigs a week, and have made a very good living and played the Albert Hall. They just did it for the 4th time 2 months ago. So it is possible to have a cottage industry outside, but you do have to really work very, very hard at it.
I think there's another 4th way of what you're saying. I think strategy is something that anyone can do. Like, I was a 22-year-old kid putting out a Kaiser Chiefs single, and I didn't know that much. I'd read a few books about creation that didn't necessarily make me qualified to release records. And
Alan McGee did.
yeah, exactly. So I knew that he didn't know what he's doing, so it couldn't have been that hard. And I think that if you do your research and you create a hit list each month of 5 people you'd love to think would listen to your band's record, and you find out if they're the right person, or you spend that time trying to find the 5 people that should be listening to your records, you can find a hell of a lot of information about people online now to... I've got a photo of Elliott Smith on my Twitter profile. In the last year, I've only had 3 emails from people going, oh, I sound a bit like Elliott Smith. I see you've got an Elliott Smith picture on your Twitter profile. It is astonishing how little research people do. And it can be a bit stalkerish. I have had people send me songs based on blog posts I've written, which was not necessarily something that I'd like every day. But I think there's a lot of research that you can do, and I don't know, for instance, Hugh Stevens DJs in club nights in Oxford, and you take your demo and actually physically hand it to him, and 9 times out of 10 he will listen to that demo before he listens to one that landed in his post box. If you send someone a personalised letter going, I really enjoyed your review of the Feist album, there was this point you made and it really resonated with me and how I make my music. Those letters are personal, and the amount of stuff that I receive in my inbox from professional companies charging artists up to £1,000 a month to service their music to me, that's generically mass mailed, and I'm never going to get bothered listening to it. I've sent so much of that music that it's the personal people. The band that are playing tonight sent me a message on Twitter saying, we're playing, here's a link to our music, have a listen. And it's like, that's personal, direct. It wasn't intrusive. It wasn't just check us out. There was contextual. There was sense of them knowing what the site is. And I think that doing your research is something that doesn't cost millions of pounds. It just costs time.
And I'll just, to further on that point, you can get your stuff heard by almost anybody if you do apply yourself, do your research. They will listen, but only once. So don't, for God's sake, go and beard Hugh Stevens in his disco night and hand him a CD of the first demo you've made when you know that 9 months down the line your band is going to sound so much better. If you're going to be better in 9 months' time, wait 9 months and then give him something that will, really, really impress him. Because a second time, when it's got your name on it, he won't bother listening to it, because he'll know that's the load of no-hopers that came and approached me in Oxford. So, a good example, but you said Kilmurray got in touch via Twitter. They got in touch with me via Twitter as well, and just gently made the point they were going to be playing here, and gave a link to their Bandcamp page. And I went to their Bandcamp page, I clicked play on the first track, and it blew my socks off. It was fantastic. So that's an example of getting it right, and when you've got it right, then take it to the right people. But don't take your crops to market until they're ready to sell. Don't take half-grown seedlings. Take ripe, ready crops. All you have to be is good. So on that note, I'd like to just ask each of the panelists to give us 2 sentences to round up what they've taken from this and also what they'd like to just point out from what's happened. Would you like to start, Graham?
I suppose a little bit of advice, really. I mean, I would say for anyone who wants to sort of be successful with music is work on your craft and work on songs. Production is just tinsel, really. You've got to just make sure that you've got great songs. Great songs will last forever. I think that's all I've got to say.
Yeah. As we've only got 1 minute left, I thought I was digging through our pre-owned section before I came away today, and I found an album by Tom Robinson. It's £2.50, but I'm thinking if Tom signs it, I might be able to get £5 for it. So if anybody wants a signed Tom Robinson album for £5 later on, we'll split the 125 each.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and there's lots of more pre-owned vinyl in Truck Store on the Cowley Road. Thank you.
Okay.
I guess my main piece of research, piece of advice is to do your research. I met a kid a few years ago in the City conference who'd started his own T-shirt company that had gone from wanting to make T-shirts to looking on YouTube at how to design T-shirts, learned how to use graphic design program. He then learned which sort of T-shirts to use, how to screen print. He then, from there, started selling T-shirts at £27 each through a do-it-yourself, sell it, I think it was Etsy or one of those kind of stores. Within 7 months of basically using YouTube to learn anything that he wanted to know, anything he didn't know the answer to, he Googled it, which is what you should do in almost all circumstances. I had staff and I never understood why they were asking me questions when the answer was on the internet. And the fact that he went from, he was 16, 17 when I met him, and he just was opening his own shop in Manchester and had just paid off his mum's mortgage through selling collectible T-shirts. And it was astounding, and it's amazing you don't hear more of those stories. So I think there are inspirational tales everywhere, and there's no reason why you can't do it.
My closing advice is don't send your demo to record labels. Do everything else. So play as many live shows as you can, send your music to blogs, you know, like contact people at local radio stations, like plug into a music community and, you know, build your own and grow your own fan base and your own scene, and just try and keep things as interesting as possible, because then the record labels will come to you, and most A&Rs just love the thrill of the chase.
I guess that, I don't know if it's advice or just a comment, which is, this is a kind of a golden age potentially where artists and audiences have gained some of the power back that was in the middle. It's gone back to distributed to the edges, and I think that's that's a wonderful thing. And so there's a lot of opportunity. So don't think you need to go down the traditional route all the time. I mean, I know everyone wants to show their grandchildren the record they made when they were kids, but there's more to it than that. The notion of sustainability, of creating culture and finding and earning a living from that is very, very important. And it's possible in so many more ways than it ever was. And I think that's a good thing. So it's a good time to be doing what you're all doing. That's it. Goodbye.
I would just say, don't panic. Nothing ever really changes as much as everyone says it does. People will always want hits, and probably the biggest rock band in this country at the moment, who are coming back later this year, could not have started in the more DIY place and doing things their own way, uncompromised, than any other band. I've no Biffy Clyro, right there, it's done, easy. You just have to be great.
I will be very personal. I waited 10 years for making Vinyl Mania. I hope that my next film will be before the next 10 years.
Okay, there's a lot of wise words spoken here tonight. I guess the main thing for me is that remember that it's an industry, it's the music industry, and it's a business. So go into it with your eyes open and work hard, and good luck.
Thank you to all our panellists. Thank you to Rory Curran.